finally I'm here, and so happy that we can do this conversation. We try to, it's very difficult for me today to do talks about my work, because work and work and work, and then after a few years you have so many things. But anyway, I will try to do a quick review. It's 45 minutes. We try to go less or less. Will be a lot of photograph. I will try to introduce myself. I will not talk about every work, because I think will be, unfortunately, will take longer. But as an artist, I develop myself. I developed my art and my career starting in the 90s. At the very end of the 80s, I started to paint. I was a self-taught artist. I didn't begin in the schools, and it was something that I decided to do. After, when I was 16, 17, I realized that I really wanted to have my life as a painter. And I do so many things. I've been in the army. I studied something completely different that was a technical career. And at some point in my life, I get the opportunity to go to university. And I have to say that probably quite late, I really entered to academy, to the University of Art. And I believe that there's a lot of my practice is coming from that randomness in the way I learn, the way I teach myself, because I have to say that many things happen between me and my studio, and things that I wanted to do in my life, etc. I think it's something never changed in Cuba. It's always been difficult. But that time was specifically very, very hard, and I was very young, and we always call and talk about this period as a special period. That was a political, we call it like this, and there was a moment when the communists fell down in Europe. Cuba was very close of that. And for many reasons, I think my generation of artists and in general Cuban art developed a very political approach to language in general. And I come from painting background. I was originally, I say that I've been painting. And at some point in the school, I discovered photography. I started to develop things more with the documentations, with the documents of the city, etc. And that brings me to a long journey. Actually, the first pieces I will start to put very, very early pieces from the 90s, when I was really taking the city as a gallery, as a museum. I was really more close to graffiti or to making signs on the city than the real art inside galleries and museums. But it's a practice and methodology that I really keep it very much, this idea of documenting the reality and we can say transform with another material in another spaces and creating another meanings. The 90s was a very important moment for what we call installation art and creating spaces, and I think I come from that practice as well, mixing the city, document, photography and urban spaces with this idea of sculpture, that expanded sculpture in the spaces, bring me to a concept of very close to architects. I really developed a big studio with architects, with designers, that I've been creating different approach to language. How should we say, it's a very open field. It was one of my first ideas. I really wanted to break the mold of a painter. I was a painter. I say I can go big painter all my life, because I would be so boring in my life. And then I started to develop this practice that I will go sometimes faster, sometimes slowly. This is early pieces I've been developing in the street of Havana in the early 90s. This piece is called 39, and I've been working on photographing a lot of objects and signs that I found in the street. Sometimes I don't know the reasons that they appear, and it was just creating meanings to this object. In this case, this 39 number that was a road in the woods, and then I create this little black sign with a lot of meaning about the 39. What's meaning of the 39? in the history and cultural, and sometimes talking about songs, etc., about the Bible, etc. And then I put it directly on the streets and create this kind of relation with the public. This is another of those pieces. I just took the photograph of the building and placed it in front of the building. That was for many years. I've been very, very interested in creating this kind of art, but later on being called like a relational art or something, or was a lot of thesis happens from Nicolas Bourriaud and many people. But in the early 90s and at the end of the 80s in Cuba, we was really much about that. It was really like I tried to find an open ground where we can discuss ideas and create art that doesn't belong to galleries and museums. It was a very, very important moment for the young Cuban artist by the time. No? I believe as an artist, how I say before, we was very focusing ideology and politics, how to break this relation with we're coming from this very heavy authoritarian government. It's a strong system that is a communist that doesn't give a space to. By the time, imagine Cuba was no advertising at all. You don't have nothing. You really don't advertise a cigarette or a car, only political meetings on the street. It was like big billboards. And then I start to find all these little things. No? In this case, I just copy the corner of the street in Havana in another material, in number 6. And then I place it there again. I don't know what is this, but don't worry. Then, actually coming from that practice on the city, I discovered photography. I have to say that it wasn't all wrong period, a lot of work after, but I started to use photography more and more conscious, we can say. No? At the beginning, I was more about the documentation, kind of conceptual or post-conceptual ideas of using the photograph, the writing on the street, etc. And then this is just a photograph that has been with me since the early 90s, this angel. This is a decapitated angel with a Fidel Castro, whatever. And then this is a very early exhibition and very early pieces in the 90s as well, dealing with the connection between New York and Havana. It was my first exhibition in New York. And in this case, I have this guy that I found in the city with the Twin Towers tattoo in the arm, and then I just create this little installation, talking about the desire, about the idea of the notion of another city, the idea of emigration, the idea of bringing another place in his body. And this is the instrument to tattoo in the jails of Cuba. And they do very, very rough, very strong way to. This is a series of drawings, and they're very early in the 90s as well. I started to develop drawings that looks like architects' drawings, but they was not. It was just a diptychs between the photograph and the drawing, where I substitute the Havana in the 90s and even today. It's really a very suffer city. It looks like a big war happened there. It's all these ruins around of a very beautiful city, very Art Deco, Art Nouveau city, based together with the colonial history. And it's something that really brings me a lot of, it's another of those Tower of Babel, coming from this idea of the woods as well. Excuse me, sometimes you don't small photograph there. This is a methodology I've been using for many, many years, this idea of photographing the city and then create a new drawing, a new project that is doesn't. It's not a real project. It's really a game to visualize the city in general. No? It's just a cut building on the half, and this idea of the blood going I do believe that a lot of my practice, even if you will see other work that's going more to the sculpture and installation, is really based on photography, documents, and drawings. I think the methodology I use a lot to create all my work is really based on this idea of photography and documents, and try to turn what you are seeing as a document, try to turn into something kind of fictional space. This is another series of photographs I developed very much at the beginning of the 2000s. They are big photograph, and this is pin and threads on top of the photograph. And then I just draw on top of that. It's a very sculptural photograph at the very end, no? It's another of those series. It's called, this is another billboard, De por vida con Fidel, for life with Fidel. And then I just do this vertical garden with the guillotine on the top. All those are big size photography. In another moment of those series, I've been taking photographs that take probably between one and another is 10 years, 12 years of difference when I shot the building and many years later disappeared. I just render it. On the right is rendered by thread and pins as well. And it's this idea of the deja vu between the spaces. Something I've really been saying for many years, that the photograph, I love to do photograph, like direct photograph, just doing little things, little movement around the image, but doesn't touch a lot. I believe a lot in the photograph as a document. How important is this moment that I shift the image just with a little move, no? And even if I become I experiment later a lot with photography. You will see in some other works. This is a piece I did in Madrid, probably one of the first pieces I did in the early 2000s in Madrid. Is two important buildings, and they are shot with a bullet shots on the photograph. Another investigation with photography. It's called phototopography. I did it in Athens, in Greece, for a project there. And this is a transformation of photography. I transport the photography to another material using different technological thing in the computer. And I created, we can say, the range of gray and blacks in the photograph and create this landscape. The photograph are around, you have a relation between the photograph and the object. And the photograph itself are made in cow bone. I just cut the bone of the cow and do a very small gelatin silver on top of the image. During the time I've been thinking to develop these objects, I wanted to put it together with a photograph, and I wanted to be a very special photograph. And then I ended to do this series of bone photographs. And then normally, as well, I've been presenting these pieces like this, together. And for me, it's like a little fragment of a building. It's a polystyrene, it's a very bad material, non-recyclable, it's really terrible for using for packaging. But I turn into this beautiful object after all the process of it's a piece that now is in the permanent collection in Athens. If you go to the museum, and been going around in different. This is another series of those made in Colombia, and then the bones are coming from the X-rays from kids that have problems with the bones. I have it from the doctor friend. Actually, this is Ukraine. I've been taking photographs and different approach to
This is another very recent series that I use the bone photograph one more time and paintings. Actually, they are it's a documentation I did in Colombia, in Armero. Armero was a place in the 80s that was a city that was completely destroyed, a volcan and water, and the whole city flowed like Pompeii at night, and more than 25 people died there. Then I've been in this area, and the whole city is a sink to the half. It's a very weird situation, and then I developed this series of paintings based on the houses of the places and the part of the body and photograph of the place, playing with this idea of the natural things growing up inside the buildings, etc. Can you help me with the time a little bit? I don't want to make you here sleep. I will go faster. This is actually wood, acrylic painting, and it's a pyro grave. It's a little born the drawing is born in the woods. This is another series of those photographs, one more time. Actually, they are cut, laser cut in the top of the photograph. It's a series I developed for Moscow, based on the billboards, on Cuban billboards, and developed this idea of the buildings. Buildings coming from the empty billboards. In this first group of works I put for you is just to show you different ways I approach photography. Because this is such an important media for me. Media. This is another series that is taking it's a not completely different using of material. It's in a stucco material, gesso, stucco on top of metal. And in this case are two different places. On the left is the rest of the walls of Carabanchel. That was a very important jail in Madrid, very political jail as well. And now it's only existing this little fragment. And then I just printed as a negative, and in the right I mix the arch of the defense in Paris with the Carabanchel landscape. And then it's just a mix of the two images. In the way I wanted to play this idea that the photograph, when they are a negative, they wish to be something. The photographer is still, they don't have an identity. And as soon as you move as a positive, it's changing. No? This is a Cuba, this is a colonial wall, and this is mixing with the Berlin Wall on the right. They are big size photograph as well. This is a very kind of recent project based on this similar way of using photography. This is Ukraine. In 2014, I was in Donetsk. This is a city that today is one of the main places of the war, and the separatists, the Russians, etc. And I get there, invite, let me see if I can find it coming back. Okay, I get there, invite to this foundation that they have a very fantastic old minery factory that was completely abandoned. Then I just visit the place and I start to find the rest of the Soviet Union times, photography of Gorbachev and all those leaders, etc. And I developed this series of photographs I call the Sunday photography. And it's like a small paintings, like a little game, being photographing more than 30 photographs inside the place, using the same technique of the stucco, etc. And then, together with that, I've been documenting a lot of abandoned buildings in Donetsk. Abandoned buildings that was made by the Russian times. And that was like a time freeze, no? And I developed this series. These big pieces, sculpt drawings on a stucco of the Russians, satellites and spaceships. I have a big discussion with the people because people hate the project. When I presented to the foundation, they was like, you know, Carlos, we don't want to hear about Soviets anymore in our life, about Russians. And I said, look, I am talking about myself. My history is really related to Russians and Soviets because I was in Cuba in all my childhood. Anyway, I never ended the project for them, and I do for myself. I'm like a few years later, the Russians invade Crimea, and then the big war happens recently, etc. And this piece become like a very iconic of the time. In this foundation, they've been developed even a lot of sculpture from Daniel Buren or Pascal Martin Taillou and different big artists. Actually, Donetsk, by the time of the people entered Crimea, was a place where really the center of the separatists. And they turned this foundation, this factory, in the detention place, where they torture and etc. They put bombs to all the wars around. Anyway, it's just a little history of when I get there, I have the feeling of this, the whole project is called Sunday Photography and the Nightmare of Ukraine Nightmares is the name of the work. And how this was rejected by them, the hate, the way they really related to the history of Russians there, is so interesting what happens later, no? And then I have a lot of conversation with these people because the owner of the place, the father died, and then she has to get the body to Kiev. She cannot bring it back to bury in Donetsk where he wanted to do it, etc. No? Then it's a very particular piece. This is actually a different fragment of this big hospital, abandoned hospital, that I turn into this kind of a spaceship, etc. No? Anyway, sometimes art is going beyond the reality. No? This is a recent series I've been working in. There are big puzzles, big size puzzles, dealing one more time with the ruins of the buildings. Actually, the whole piece is crumbling inside the work. A photograph from different parts of the world as well. I'm back going and go back. This is another series of work I've been developed with ceramics in Havana originally, and it's called Sloppy Joe's Bar. It's based on the bar that was completely abandoned and destroyed. I just copied the outside ceramics of the place and create my own bar. This is apart from the 1993 I started this work and completed in 95. I recuperate a lot of photographs from the original place and put the music, and it's a very happy piece, talking about the ruins, about the kind of nostalgia of the city, how it changed. This is a ceramic, the original ceramic. I normally do open the exhibition with the bar, and remember in the 90s we can even smoke inside the work. Now we cannot smoke any place anymore. Probably bring it here to Istanbul, then we can smoke again on the work. But I like this idea of the piece that is alive and bring the people happy. This is a piece I did recently in Madrid. Actually, coming back to the ceramic process. This is a very political piece I did for the Centro Arte 2 de Mayo. And this is a pharmacy on the left, the big size is a photograph from the pharmacy. And on the right is the ceramic I changed the whole meaning and make it in ceramic again. There's a photograph on the ceramic. I cannot translate everything, but it's really dealing with this, how I reinterpreted everything, the political position. I did this exhibition in 2014 or 15, and was a moment of a very political situation in Spain. They wanted to approve the abortion. They wanted to do many things there. And when I do this work, the museum was freaked out because we have the right wing on, still we have it in Madrid, and they was really very strong with that. But anyway, it's a just game of words. All the time the ceramics advertise different solution, no medical solution or pills. In this case, it's a pill for the, how do you say, to the woman's, the pain of woman menstruation, etc. And then I play with that because that was very hard in the right moment that there was in this fight about abortion, etc. That was a really strong moment. Anyway, this is another of my approach to the city. One more time, using photograph, changing photograph, creating political meanings, new meanings to the image. Coming back to another moment, Japanese garden. It's just a documentation of the city in Havana, where I collect all these capitals, like in archaeology, and then create this kind of. This is one of my first models, making with lamps and bottles, and it's called City View from the Table of My House. I don't know if we have some details, but just a piece from the 90s as well. Since that pieces, I've been developing a big obsession with the tables. I've been creating a lot of works that play a lot with the tables. This idea of the horizontal space, the domestic space. This is a piece that belongs to this series. It's a video of a tree growing up on the ruin, and in the other corner you have just a bonsai. This is El Matadero de Madrid. This is probably my first big exhibition living in Madrid. In 2010 I started to do these pieces. And they are tapestries. Actually, they are tapestries based on the names of the shops in the city of Havana. I've been doing a big documentation of the city, and then they have a very particular names. In Cuba, in the 40s and 50s, they developed the place. For example, the first one is called La General, the General, and I create a new writing. It's like a poetry. It's called La General Tristeza negará placeres. The general sadness will deny pleasures. And then I weave it. They are Jacquard Loon's tapestries. Actually, they're very rich and big size. You can see here. It's a photograph transferred to these gobelins, because they are gobelins, tapestries, in different kind of threads. And then I've been looking for many years to do that. And, I am so obsessed with some ideas. I've been photographing these, and I wanted to find a place that we're able to do a tapestry that really, being a photography, looks like a photograph. And then I found these people that being able to do it, and we did it in Belgium. And it's really fantastic. For example, this one is a jewelry in Cuba that's called El Cairo, the Temple of Lovers. Then the only original thing is the original, and the rest I created. Created writing and say the Cairo, the Temple of Lovers, the cradle of pharaohs, and the time of the indignation. This piece was made by the time of the Arab Springs, Primavera Árabe, no? And then it's just a big invention of the new tapestry. They are big size. They are normally 1 by 1 in scale. They are like 3 by 5 meters, and it's a big installation. This piece is being in Venice Biennale, being in different places. For example, this one, the place is only, the name is the Fortune, La Fortuna. And I create this, the fortune of people is the unfortune of people. Or the fortune of people is the fortune of people. Or in this case, that originally is this here. This is the original thing in the city, RBC. And I create this writing, revolt, barrel change, revuelta, batalla, cambio. And it's so beautiful the way you really enter this work, and then you have this sensation. It's very soft. I ask the people to remove the shoes, and then they put over their feet something, and it's really, you have this sensation that you are looking at stone, but at the same time you are really walking on the very fantastic material. No? This is the fight is from everything, for everyone is the fight. La lucha is the original. Okay, I will go faster because there's no way to stay here forever. But this is my first presentation in Documenta in Kassel, where I do a real approach to architect. And it was the first time I started to work with architects in my team. And I developed different projects like a university, apartment buildings, medical buildings. But I took from the original abandoned buildings in Havana, I took the original plans of the architects, and with my architects I developed a new things. Huh? Really very meaningful, very political discussions there about all the topics. This was a university. It was a very specific university that you never get together with another students. All the information or all the material was really made through technology. We are talking here about 2001. I think by the time we never have even a telephone where we interconnect. Today it really looks a very, very naive. But at the same time, it's the real problem. The problem I'm talking in these universities, the problem we are facing today, how we are really consuming information and knowledge, supposed to be knowledge in the very packaged way, no? That's, anyway, let me go faster. This is an apartment building. I create this kind of transparent building where everyone can see the life of the others. This is a medical building. This is a piece I did for La Caixa in Barcelona. It's one of my crazy moments of developing buildings. And it's called self-flagellation, insubordination, and survival. Self-flagellation, survival, and insubordination. These three buildings that happen at the beginning, like an entry, making with a razor blade, bread, and cocktail Molotov. Then I developed all these buildings, like a city that you, imaginative city, etc. This is another of those pieces. This is right now at Tate Modern. It's called Letter to the Censors. It's a piece I developed talking about cinema. It's a big archive of all censored cinema by the time I do this work. And inside the piece is a projector. You don't see it here, but the image inside there destroyed cinemas in Cuba. And then I ended with this film that is just presenting this long archive on the censored films all over the world. It really was a very, this is another piece by stop a lot here. This is a piece called Post Capital. Post Capital was a model I developed in Barcelona for a very strong exhibition there, based on all the money existing by the time. Then what you see here is the iconography existing in every bill all over the world. And then you have the number and the name of the currency around. No? This is another of those pieces. This piece is now entered the Reina Sofia, where we've been talking. It's made for the same moment, for the post-capital thing. This is from 2006. Actually, it was pre-crisis of economical crisis. And we've been having this discussion in Barcelona with Iván de la Nuez, a very important writer and philosopher, and Daniel Andújar. We developed a project called Post Capital. We wanted to talk about the cities, about how the cities been changed. We can say the notion of the capital changed with the notion of money. And then what you see here is all the countries that by the time was the European Union. And what you see in front is just the money, the coins of each country in euros, developing in X and Y graphics of the developing of the economy in general. This is another piece made in China. It would go faster. Cutting papers in different shapes. You tell me the time. This is a piece called Oriental Minute in the Occidental Music, and it's just an orchestra inside there. Another important piece by Spanish time. This is the last sculpture of Franco existing in, and this is the head of every president that I found by the time. And I do this little game that changing the head of Franco interchange for other presidents. Everyone have a pigeon on the head. This is what pigeons do in sculpture. They sit there, and that is Chirac, and it's Fidel, and it's everyone there. Aznar. It's a funny piece. This is an important piece for me. I developed in 2009 Cuba. It's called the Crown Jewels, and there are eight buildings related to military and tourist places in many places. You know? You start with the ESMA, the Escuela de Mecánica Armada in Buenos Aires, where they kill many people. The stadium in Chile, Santiago de Chile. There are small pieces in silver, and I presented like a small jewels inside this. Actually, when I presented this piece in Cuba, was my first time coming back in many years to Cuba. I presented this piece in the Museum of Fine Art. It was a big scandal to do these pieces. This is Guantanamo base. This is the DGI. It's a kind of intelligentsia building that exists in Linea. You know that, Jose Luis. It's a very famous building that is belong to the. This is a KGB. It's a Pentagon. This is a Villamarista, famous building in Cuba, where they still stop people and torture people there. Anyway, this is another series I developed on the European crisis. This little plates I do in the place I do money, produce money with the same technique. But basically they are the way they call people, or the way they've been doing the big protest in the 2008 and 2010. Cyprus, Italy, Ireland. And it's a small portfolio. This is what they put in Cyprus. They put the name, the no, all the time. And they've been together with these banks. I create this bank in gold. There are banks that been involved in the big economic crisis in 2008, 2010. It's a little game similar of the silver ones. I believe that the other piece that belonged to 2009. 2009, it was talking about the Cold War, about the very political and torture places, etc. But this is the new problems after the 2008-2010 coming to the economy, and that's the very important. This is the Argentinian banks that was involved in the Corralito. This is the Deutsche Bank in Germany. All of them are making 24 carats, and they go running inside this safe, like this safe you have here. It's a wonderful safe. This is the Banco de España, Spanish bank. Anyway, I will jump a little bit here. It's another exhibition. This is another series. This is a Haus der Kunst in Munich. I developed several exhibitions in Munich and in Germany. I'm dealing with this history of art and politics and etc. I've been developed this series of glass pieces that they create like a Lego pieces with magnets and water-cut glass, very massive architecture models. I did that in China. This is in China actually. I keep going for another. This is books I've been developed. In 2005, I started to develop this series of books. That is, I turned all my drawings into pop-ups, like a kid's book. Did it for an exhibition in Los Angeles, in Mocha, in LA. Another of those series of pop-ups with all prints. I just cut the very old print engraved. This is from 19th century French prints, and I turn it into new buildings. Okay, this is Brazil, big library of Brazilian architect with bullet shots. This is China, big library of Chinese architecture, dealing with the development of China, of Beijing in 2007, 2008. This is a funny piece. I found this book, edited by Louis Vuitton in Paris, about Karl Marx. The book is called the Christophorus Columbus of the Capital. That's the title of the book, and it's edited by Louis Vuitton. And then I found this little bag of Louis Vuitton and put the book. And the work is named like a Louis Vuitton travel with Karl Marx, and we all travel with Louis Vuitton. It's just how really the capitalists understand the capitalists very well. And the only people who make a lot of money is Louis Vuitton. We are just traveling with the bag. I do this series of books in Paris. This is based on the book of May 68 by Jean Combet-Dick. And you remember this text of the May 68 that say the most beautiful sculpture is a brick flying to the head of the policeman. And then I like this statement, I do this barricade. This is another piece of newspapers. Today I was admiring the Yüzyıl newspapers pieces. Love it. I don't know if I pronounce well his name. This is a piece I presented in Shanghai originally, and it's just cover all the information and leave just the images, and they did a big archive of images. Going back to some of my other sculptures. This piece actually was many years at the Reina. We've been talking before in the permanent collection there. I developed in the early 2000s all this Japanese sculpture we call, but was my obsession with architecture. Somebody's talking for me. This is in Japan. I developed this series in Japan for the first time. I've been doing these Japanese lamps before in Cuba. It's a very, very bad way to do it. Very, in Cuba without material, etc. Then I get to Japan for an exhibition, and I develop real Japanese lamps based on the abandoned and destroyed buildings by earthquake in the big abandoned area in Niigata. And then outside the house, the traditional house, I developed this kind of cemetery with plants based on the plants of the building. And inside, I developed as well, similar with the plants of the building, but with lanterns. Sometimes you do something and years later you get the dream possibility of it. This is in Venice, Biennale, first time I participate there. And it's just a big walls with little halls that have buildings. And kind of projected city on the space. It was a big space on the Arsenale. The title of the piece is How the Earth Wanted to Resemble the Sky. De cómo la tierra se quiere parecer al cielo. No? This reflection of how we are humans look and see the answer of gods, if we can say, on earth. No? This is the second part of the same piece, but it's just an aerial view. It's a big piece as well. This is Candles. It's a copy of a city of Sonsbeek in Arnhem. That was a big city that was destroyed by Germans in the 45 in the war. Anyway, it's a big film about that city. And from that I developed this other second piece that is different fragment of the city, of the world. From New York to Havana. And it is a city that is consuming and destroying itself all the time. Go Faster, another model. Actually, it's a piece I did in 2009, and later I've been able to do it in real size in Portugal, in the mat. And this is all these traffic lights and real lights from the city that I put it inside the museum and create this kind of garden for a few months there. The piece is called I Never Been So Realist Until Today. And then the whole light is breathing all the time. It's like going in and out, in and out. A very crazy production of it. But then after it was many months there in the museum, and people really enjoyed it. It was like a camping there. This is a permanent piece. It's called I Don't Want to See Anymore My Neighborhoods. And it's in the Chianti Classico. And I did this piece in 2006 when the big discussion about the world is global. Everyone can move everywhere. You can be everywhere. And me as Cuban, I cannot go any place. It was visas everywhere. And then I get invited to do this piece permanent there in the beautiful landscape of the Chianti. And I developed these different walls, existing walls, political walls. Like on the right you see the Mexico wall, and this is the Adriano's wall. You see Havana Malecons, the Chinese wall. At the end you see Ramallah, and this is Melilla and Ceuta and Korea, and it's a big landscape of Berlin Wall. And it's like a maquette of all these political grounds. Huh? This is another piece I developed in Japan. I don't go very much inside that, but it was a kids' playground dealing with architecture, industrial architecture. This is another sculpture. Deleuze and Guattari Fixing the Rizoma is the title. another of my games is rulers. I create these metal rulers and wood rulers that are buildings at the same time. This is a very recent piece. Unfortunately, I cannot put the videos of that, but it's a very interactive piece. It's a big symphony I create with more than 60 musicians from the streets, from different cities. And I get together with a composer, and we've been able to do a 17 minutes mixing all these sounds that I record. And then what you see is a kind of orchestra. I put every musician, and in the center is the music of this guy, and every second one music appear the musician. It's very interactive, beautiful, conceived, I say. It's been with me in the last few years, this piece, and give me a lot of happiness. No? My wife, Maya, that's here, she participated in the work. She's a musician. It's a very complex piece that really involves many people, many production. And I get some good prize with this piece. It's really a piece pre-pandemic. And I showed in the museum in Boston, pre the pandemic, and when happens the pandemic, these people was like freaked out because they say, wow, this music that you've been doing, or everyone interconnected by iPads, etc. It's like you've been looking for what happened now that we've been really living this kind of dystopic life. But anyway, it's a piece that I've been showing recently in many places. It's called Partitura, score. This is another recent piece from last year. This is made in the church in Bologna. And it's as well, one more time, I use the music of the organ from the plays, etc. And it was a big intervention with music. It's Madrid and the streets. Go faster. Yeah. So many things to say, people. So many words. This is a piece I developed with the stamps, based on the very political stamps that I create, with many presidents and politicians having the gesture of photograph with kids. That's named the Roots of the War. It's a very recent piece as well. It's Knife and Buildings. They are very recent pieces from last year, all those. Hmm?
Where was the previous Where is that?
This is in Paris, but original I did it in the streets in Bilbao. This is a street, post for mirror, etc. And it's just writing on the retro mirror. I say that one of my important bases is photography and drawings, but as well writing. I use a lot of writing in my work. This is a kind of, I play a lot with this idea of looking, when you are in the car, you are having this mirror that you are looking at the city. It's going back at the reality, but you are going forward. And it's a big reflection on that, a big reflection on the image, what you are seeing, what you are not seeing, what is disappearing, and second, what is appearing in front of you. I think it's probably, I get captivated. I've been collecting this mirror for many years. I found it in the street, destroyed, and I've been saving. I said, one day I will do something with that. And that's a piece I did it original in the street, and was in the foundation in Paris last September, October. It's very connected to the tapestries as well, with this idea of the writing on the street. I do believe that I come from this practice that is very conceptual, that I really believe in the writing as an image. But at the same time, I believe that, for example, today seeing Shekil art that really inspired me a lot, because I found the roots of the things I've been doing as well. No? But I believe that we are a group of artists that growing up in the 90s, that we go beyond even this idea of the conceptual art. Of course, the writing is there, but I believe a lot in the way you present it, in probably not so rough, not so direct, but you create a kind of object that involve a little bit this. Even he have that kind of pieces. No? He have these very elaborate metal pieces with stone, with writing, that I think for me was very revealing. No? Like wow. But my work is at the very end is very you can say the narrative. I create a lot of histories in myself, inside of me, before I do something. This is a very recent piece as well. This is models. Being always doing these models. They are like kind of vertical. And then it's just this projection that happens at the building. It's crumbling, the grass is growing up and it's getting dry. You know, it's like this cycle of life of the city and the natural things. Huh? You know, I put a lot of work, excuse me. The piece I developed original as well in the city. Originally was an outside piece. It's a bronze tree, actually developed in El Conde Duque, in the Palace of Conde Duque in Madrid. It was a public piece. This piece is from this year. I did in South Africa, in Johannesburg. We did a visit there, and I developed a big documentation of the city, a lot of photographs, and I create this piece that is called like a goka. Goka is a word that entering unlegal to the places. And then I create this kind of keys, this bronze keys, hanging with the real keys from the city, and a lot of photographs of the town. I wanted to do a document of the city, but bring it in another way, and that's the way I bring it. I bring it in this idea of when you arrive to a place that you don't know, and you wanted to enter the city, what do you do? And of course, as a foreigner, you keep with a camera, in my case, but at the same time, I developed this double meaning, like I can go in another, through another levels, and then I create these objects that they are a kind of elaboration, a beautiful necklace, but at the same time, they are very aggressive objects to, you know, Johannesburg is an extremely violent place. I know very well since the 95 I've been in Johannesburg, and then after many years I'm coming back now, two times in the last year and this year, and it's just so surprised how changed the city, how strong it is right now. And for me, you know, doing art is something I don't say, but it's clear that it's really a process of reflection on things. For me, probably doing some pieces are problems that I have in front of me, and I wanted to solve. I wanted to understand what I am seeing. It's not only the pleasure to do things because I like it. Of course, I love to develop very aircraft work all the time, but at the same time have this necessity of understanding, no? And this is a piece from this year, a few months ago. This one as well is a very recent work. It's called counterweight, contrapeso. It's counterweight, and it's like the plums for construction. I turn it into buildings. You know, all these floating pieces are like. Let me see if we have details. No, they didn't put any details. But the plums are buildings, and the counterweight in the bottoms are building as well. And I wanted to play with this idea of the tension between a kind of industrial place, but a kind of fragile and floating, non-existing city. No? Sometimes I go for more to the poetical and material. I'm very much into material. I love using different. You can see here how many things I've been using, from paper to tapestries, many things based on photography, on documents, on very, I can say that I'm very rational way of thinking. Anyway, this is I opened this exhibition last week, or last 10 days or something in Malta. And this is 2 moments of this installation. I have this. I don't know if this I'll finish. Possible? You have the song? Can you hear very well? Anyway, I just wanted to put something alive. Actually it's a place, it's a piece called, I don't want to say it in my neighborhood. My neighbors. Exactly. My English. And this is the construction of the wall in my house. And actually I did this piece for in Barcelona for Post Capital. But it's important the music. You can put the music while you put it. Anyway, this is just a process of construction of a. And the music is fantastic. It's the Pierrot Lunaire from Chamber. And then after I construct the building, the wall, this is what happened. And actually it was a seed for the piece you saw before that I did permanent in Actually it was in Italy, because it's a fantastic place. It's collectors that have this beautiful landscape. It's called Castello di Ama. I don't know if you ever, wherever you go to, you have to see this collection. And then I wanted to do something else there, but I bring an idea, a beautiful idea. But I have this video, and I really wanted to have these walls in the middle of the Chianti. And I say, these people will not accept my work, because it's too strong, it's too political to have these things here. But anyway, I talked to them and said, look, I have another idea besides that. And I showed the video, and they were so happy with the video. I said, let's build your walls. I have many people who hate me for years, friends of mine, say, yeah, you do so ugly piece in the middle of the Chianti. Why do you do that? I say, come on, art has to be like this. And then actually it was a problem in 2006 when I developed these pieces that everyone was talking about how easy it was to move from one place to another, that the world become, everyone will go to everywhere, etc. And the problems we are still facing with that in this political level is still until today. I think multiply the amount of walls, of political walls all over the world. And then it's a piece that really I like sometimes to, when an artist, when you do something, it happens there, and you are not so sure, of course, because you are dealing with but seeing things after years and see how this piece is still alive, how the problem I talked in 18 years ago or 17 years ago is still today. and how big is the problem of migrations. It's really one of the big issues we have today. And then, anyway, I wanted to show something more, and this one is just a minute. Let's see if we can see music here, no? Anyway, this is I just wanted to end it with this. Is a very recent piece as well. It's based in a lot of photographs from Hitler that reenacted all the time the way he did the speeches. This piece for Munich. I did it for Munich in the Munich museum that was 5 blocks from Hitler's apartment. All the National Socialists or the Munich. It was very important place. And then basically for a period of time I think we listened to this music. This is Olivier Messiaen. What is the name of the quartet for the end of the times. Very important pieces that he did inside the concentration camp. And then, anyway, it's the process of transport by all of these are based on photographs of him. And I wanted to put him to directing the music. It was a music that was born just in the moment. They are 8 years. I don't want to do it. But anyway, this is a reason. Actually, the solo clarinet is mine. One more time, she's been doing this piece, important things for Olivier Messiaen. And this moment is the Abyss of the Birds. And we was in the house, we were living at this music. I said, wow, I have to do something with this music. And it's so important, the history of the music. And I presented for the first time in the big exhibition in Turin, Fundación Reps. Very strong political exhibition, dealing with our Russian architecture, with Mussolini history, etc. I presented there. And anyway, it's a piece that been with me recently as well. And it's finished, excuse me. I talk a lot. I send you the whole video. I have it.